So the recap of what happened last time is you have Ish-Boshet, who is the king of Yisrael, the son of Shaul, and you have David, who is the king of Yehuda, and they're cool with each other. David's not trying to take the power of Yisrael, but there's still underlying like a little bit of like who's the rightful king. And you have the general Avner of Yisrael, and then you have Yoav, the general of David of Yehuda, who is David's nephew. And they make this joke. They meet by this famous place in Israel. Everyone's watching, and they say, let's be entertained. Let's have our soldiers wrestle. And the joke, right? A lot of truth is said in jest. There's an underlying, like, this is a real power struggle, right? Anybody here ever wonder why, like, I gave this example last time, but I'll give it again. You know how in like the Olympics or in like the World Cup, when like Spain is playing Germany, it's like, it feels like in soccer, it's like life or death versus like if the Heat are playing the Celtics, yeah, it's intense, but it's not the same thing, right? Why is it not the same thing? The reason why it's not the same thing is because there hasn't been any history. There's no war between Miami and Boston. When France and Germany are playing a soccer game in the World Cup, they're doing that instead of war. Right? That's why it feels like a war. These countries don't do wars anymore. They do sports instead. But underlying it is like that same pride, right? Our wars that's turned into sporting events. And so this is a little bit of that. This is a little bit of like, it's a joke, but this either calling it sport, but this wrestling match really represents who's the actual, rightful heir to the throne. Yeah, Eitan. Okay. So the joke turns real, and these 12 soldiers on each side end up killing each other. And then Asahel, Yoav's brother, ends up trying to chase down Avner. And last time we went into the reasons why he thinks Avner is deserving of death, but he starts chasing after Avner, the general of Yisrael. So this is Asahel, David's nephew, the brother of Yoav, the general of Yehuda, chasing after Avner, the general of Yisrael. And Avner keeps telling him, stop it. Don't do this. Don't do this. As he's chasing him. And the last line that we ended off last time with is he says to him, how will I be able to face your brother Yoav? So you see the relationship here. Like Avner has a good relationship with Yoav, the general of Yehuda. He even says to Asahel, how will I be able to face your brother? Don't make me kill you. Why should I kill you? If you're following in the Pasukim, we're in Pasuk Chaf Gimel. Vayima'en lasor. But he refused to stop. He refused to turn, right? He kept on going after Avner. Vayikeyu Avner ba'achrei hachanit ala chomesh. So Avner struck him in the chomesh with his spear. What's the chomesh? We'll give different opinions. But he struck him in the chomesh with the spear. Vatetzeh hachanit ma'achrav. And the spear went through him. Vayipol sham, and he fell on the floor, right over there. Vayamut, and he died. Tachtav, on the spot. Vayhi kol haba l'makom, when everyone who came to that location, asher nafal sham, where he fell over there, Asahel, where Asahel fell, vayamot, and he died, vayamdu, it stopped. Meaning nobody could believe, Asahel was so powerful, so fast, so strong, nobody could believe that this guy just died, just like that, with such ease. Right? Now, how did Avner do this? Avner's plan was to kill Asahel suddenly. He was running, and Asahel was running after him. And right when Asahel was behind him, Avner, without looking, took his spear and went like that. And his spear was double-sided. So what should have been the handle, Asahel was not ready for it, because what you would think would be the handle was another blade going that way. And the blade went right through him. Now the chomesh generally means the rib cage, like chomesh, like 5, like his 5th rib. According to some, it was the actual heart. According to others, it was the gallbladder and the liver. But the point is, you don't want a spear going through any of those locations, right? To the point where it comes out the other side of your body. And he died on the spot, right? And the Tanakh is, we don't know Asahel, but the Navi is trying to kind of give us this idea of how insane this was that this man died on the spot. This powerful man, right? Everyone was bewildered about this. Okay, Pasuk Chaf Daled. Vayirdefu Yoav va'Avishai achrei Avner. So now Yoav and Avishai chase after Avner. Who's Yoav and Avishai? The 2 brothers of Asahel. Now it's full on real, right? Before it was a joke and just some youth, right? Some basic soldiers died, and we can call that an accident, and maybe both sides can walk away. But now Avner just killed Asahel, the most powerful guy in Yehuda. It's no more jokes, right? And now Yoav, who is Avner's friend, who we just saw, is now chasing after Avner to kill him, right? All of a sudden, the jokes got real. V'hashemesh ba'ah, and as the sun set, Bo ad Givat, they came to Amma, they came to the hill of Amma that's in Givat, Asher Pnei Giach Derech Midbar Givon, so it's giving us the details. If you come on Israel ID, we can go to this exact spot because we have all the details. Vayit Kabitsu Bnei Binyamin, and the men of Binyamin gathered, Achrei Avner, after Avner, Vayuhu la'aguda achat, and they united into one. Vayamdu al rosh giva achat, and they stood on top of the hill. Right, so Avner, right, he was the general of Shaul's army, and now Ish-Boshet's army, which is the Shevet Binyamin. And Avner's running, and all of a sudden, who does he have standing behind him? All the men of Binyamin on the hill, all united as one, right? He has all his goons, right? So first, it was 2-on-1. It was a 1-on-1, Asahel versus Avner. Then it's Yoav and Avishai chasing after Avner. And now as they're catching up to Avner, all of a sudden, he's got all of the men of Binyamin standing behind him on one mountain, all posted up like, you come at him, you come at all of us, right? Now it's really real, right? They come to his defense. Now, you should know about the Jewish people, who's in the wrong over here? Who's in the wrong in this whole scenario? Between Yehuda, between Yoav and Avner. Who's wrong? Anybody know? Whose idea was it to make this joke of a fight between the two countries? It was Avner. Avner was like, oh guys, let's have some fun. Everything that happened is his fault, and ultimately he's going to die later on. But he's not dying now. You know why? Because everyone's united behind him. And I mean that in a spiritual sense. Of course, physically, you could imagine Yoav's going to turn away, right? Because all the men of Binyamin are there. But in a spiritual sense, right? In a spiritual sense, as the Jewish people, when we are united, even when we're in the wrong, we are protected, right? Would it be dumb to build a palace on top of like 15 ships? It'd be really dumb, right? You're in the wrong if you do that. But if all 15 ships are not moving and they're all docked, will your palace collapse? No. The second one moves, then it collapses, right? So that's the lesson for us as the Jewish people. Even when we're wrong, even when we're dumb, and we're not building our palace on dry land, and we're building it on top of boats, if all the boats stay in one location, we can be wrong and Hashem will still protect us. And we see this in Tanakh so many times where the worst kings are prosperous only because they love the Jews that are around them. It doesn't matter if they're religious. It doesn't even matter if they're doing Avodah Zarah, right? It's a very powerful lesson. So of course, physically this makes sense, but I want you to understand the same thing is happening spiritually. Vayikra Avner el Yoav, and Avner calls out to Yoav. We're in Pasuk Chaf Vav 26. Vayomer, and he says, Halenetzach to'ochal cherev, halo yadata. He says, are we going to like eat swords? Like, is this really what we're doing where everybody's going to get killed? Do you not know that this is going to end in bitterness? The ad masai, and until when lo tamar la'am l'shuv ma'achrei achem? Until when you're going to tell everybody, right? Until when you're going to tell everybody to stop chasing them? So now Avner, who started this whole thing, he started it and took the last shot, just killing Asahel. He starts asking Yoav, are we going to live by the sword? Like, is this really what we're doing? Like, we're just going to have a war now and everyone's going to die? Right? Yeah, you want to seek the death of Asahel, your brother, and I get that. So you want to kill me. Well, you know what's going to happen? Someone's going to kill you. And then someone's going to avenge their blood. And before you know it, it's a full-on civil war between Yehuda and Yisrael. Is this what you want our people to go through, that we're just going to live by the sword? Right? It would be better to not even begin and nobody dies. Now, of course, Yoav replies, yeah, funny coming from you. You started this, right? It's funny that you start it, and then you take the last shot, and then you go, hey, guys, let's be bigger than this, right? It's like, well, how about let's kill you, and then let's stop the fighting. Then let's be bigger than this, and no one kills me, right? That's Yoav's reply, right? This is all your idea. And anybody here agree with Avner, or you agree with Yoav in this? Anybody team Avner? Anybody for team Avner? Avner does have a point, meaning, yeah, what happened, but sometimes you have to cut your losses, right? This is how addiction works, right? The way addiction works is a person feels like garbage, so they do something to make themselves feel better. And then because they feel like garbage for doing that thing that was garbage, they do garbage to make themselves feel better. At some point, you have to forget about the past. What? For Avner? It seems Avner is being legit, right? It seems that Avner didn't want this to happen. He did mean it as a joke, and he only killed Asahel because Asahel wouldn't give up. From his perspective, he did tell Asahel multiple times, don't do this, you don't want this, don't do this, right? So he's kind of being consistent, right? It seems things spiraled out of control even though he started it. And so he has a point. What? Well, that's the thing. Once you start something as a joke, you lose control, right? That's the idea of Lashon Hara, right? Once a person starts Lashon Hara and the rumor is out of their mouth, anything can come of it, right? That's what makes Lashon Hara so bad. So Avner tells him, look, what happened, let's just cut it now. The only person who wins in this is the angel of death. That's what he says. That's the only person who wins here is the angel of death, right? And remember, he says, how long will you wait until you stop chasing your brothers, right? We're brothers. You're Yehuda, we're Binyamin, but we're still brothers, right? Now, okay. Now, the truth is when Avner says, he says the end will be bitter, he doesn't realize it, but he's saying a prophecy for himself because his end will be bitter, which we won't see today, but we will see probably next to Nachanti. Because ultimately he does get killed. Vayomer, spoiler alert. Vayomer Yoav, Pasuk Chav Zayin, Vayomer Yoav, and Yoav responds, Chai Elokim, as Hashem lives, Ki lulei dibarta, ki az mehaboker. Had you not spoken this in the morning, had you not said what you just said this morning, right? Vayavru wrong pasuk. Had you not spoken this in the morning, not la'am ishma achrei achiv, then each brother would have his brother there. Nobody would be dying, right? If only you said this morning, right? So rather than Avner, calming Yoav down, this just makes him more upset. His brother was just killed. And it's like, oh, let's be bigger. It's like, yeah, you should have said that this morning before my brother ended up dying, right? And Pasuk Chaf Chet, Vayitka Yoav b'shofar. Yoav sounded the shofar, Vayamdu kol ha'am, and all the people stopped. V'lo yirdefu od achrei Yisrael, did not chase further after Yisrael. V'lo yavsu od lehilachem, and they no longer continued to battle. So you see the tremendous inner strength that Yoav has over here. His brother was just killed, and he's like, you know what? He listens to Avner. I'm just going to call it here. Not going to go after him. It is what it is, right? There's no point in this. That takes tremendous inner strength, right? Of the highest point. And you see, it's not even a trick. How do we know it's not a trick? That he's just trying to, lull Avner to sleep? Because it says, V'lo yirdefu od achrei Yisrael, did not chase after Yisrael. And then it says, V'lo yavsu od lilachem. And he no longer was fighting. Meaning internally, he's like, okay, I'm done, right? They call it to the end. This wasn't a tactic to distract. V'Avner v'anashav alchu ba'achara kol halayla. But Avner and his men traveled through the night. Vayivru et Yarden, they crossed over the Yarden. Vayechu kol ha'bitron vayivu mechanim. And only when they got to the other side of Machanaim, on the other side of the Yarden, did they actually rest. Because clearly, Avner didn't actually trust that Yoav wasn't going to kill him. So they wouldn't set up camp for the night until they were on the other side of the Jordan River. Only then were they comfortable. The Yoav shav ma'achrei Avner, and Yoav returned from chasing after Avner. Vayikbotz es kol ha'am, and he gathered the entire people. Vayikpukdu, and he counted them. Ma'avdei David, the servants of David, Tishasar Ish v'Asahel. 19 servants and Asahel were missing. So how many people died on Yehuda's side over here? A total of 20. 19 and Asahel, which is a big deal. The Avdei David ikumi Binyamin, and the servants of David, how many did they kill from Binyamin? Uva Anshe Avner, and the men of Avner, Shalosh Me'ot, 300, V'shishim Ishmeitu, 360 people. So you see, even though the big death was on Yehuda's side, this was an astounding victory for Yehuda, right? This thing turned real, and they ended up killing 360 people. Vayisu et Asahel, And they carried Asahel, Vayikbru, Baveker, and they buried him, Aviv, in the tomb of his father, Asher Beit Lechem, that's in Beit Lechem. Vayechu kol halayla, and they traveled the entire night. Yoav, Anashav, Yoav and his men, Vayaer lehem b'Chevron, and it only turned to light once they got to Chevron. You see over here how serious it is when we bury someone in Judaism, we want to make sure it's done right away. They would not rest. They went through the night to make sure to give him a proper burial. Now, the last 3 words of our Perek over here is that there was light in Chevron. What does that mean? This is a prophecy that now David's kingdom is about to start. It's about to ascend. The light from Chevron is David, who's going to be anointed in Chevron, etc., etc. That's the end of Perek Bet. We are going to now start in Perek Gimel. So you have Perek Gimel. We're about to see what happens. Any questions, comments, concerns on that? Zahra, how many minutes are we in?
16.
Yeah, right here. Thank you. Vatihi ha-milchama, and the war, Aruka was lengthy. Bein Beit Shaul, between the house of Shaul, Ubein Beit David, and between the house of David, right? This is just the start, right? There ends up being this lengthy war. With David, now it's like a silent war. It's a cold war. It's not necessarily an active war, but there's this war. Who's the rightful king? With David holech v'chazek, and David went and got stronger. Ubeit Shaul hochim v'dalim, as the house of Shaul got weaker. So as David is rising, Shaul is weakening, right? So, first of all, who's pulling the strings over here? Who's pulling the strings? Who's pulling the strings? Who's pulling the strings in your life?
Hashem.
God, my mama. You really believe that?
So Hashem is pulling the strings, right?
What do you mean
And
pulling this? Like your power.
Hashem runs this world, right? So what do I mean? What I mean in this context is how many tribes are in Yisrael? How many tribes are in Yisrael, and how many tribes are in Yehuda? This is an 11-to-1 ratio. You have 11 tribes that Ish-Boshet is king of, and you have David is only the king of Yehuda. And yet, even though there are many more of Yisrael than there is of Yehuda, David is growing stronger and stronger, and Shaul's house, Ish-Boshet, is getting weaker and weaker, right? Weaker and weaker. Because Hashem's pulling the strings. It doesn't matter where the numbers are. Okay. By the way, this war lasts 5 years that I'm talking about. And now we're going to get to the end. We're going to skip 5 years into the future. Now, we're going to kind of be told a little bit about David's life at this time over these next couple of years. And then we're going to get back into this war. V'yoldu l'David banim. And David had sons. Let's talk about the children that he has now, right? David starts building a family. Right? It's not just that he's a king and he's successful as king of Yehuda. He now starts to have children. B'Chevron, in Chevron. Vayhi b'charo, and his b'char was Amnon la'Achinoam. Amnon, the son, Amnon who was born to Achinoam, a Israelite. Umishnehu Kileav, Kileav la'Avigail. And Kileav was his second, born to Avigail. Ashes Naval Kalmi, the former wife of Naval from the Carmelite. V'hashlishi Avshalom, and the third one was Avshalom, ben Maakah, ben Bat Talmi, the son of Maakah, Maakah is his mother's name, Bat Talmi, Melech Geshur, the daughter of the king of Geshur. Just to give you a little brief recap of who these children are, we learn about the 3 oldest children of David. Little spoiler alert, Amnon, who's the oldest child, ends up raping his half-sister. Right, we talked about Avshalom. Avshalom, we're going to get to this in the future, but Avshalom, right, you see all three of these children have different mothers, right? You have Amnon who's born to Achinoam, you have Kileav who's born to Avigail, and then you have Avshalom who's born to Maakah. Now, is Maakah Jewish? It tells us that Maakah is a princess from Geshur, right? She's not even Jewish. And so I'll give you a brief recap of these children. The firstborn Amnon ends up raping his half-sister, the sister of Avshalom, also from Geshur. Kileav, who's the son of Avigail, is one of the 4 people to never have sinned. And Avshalom, the 3rd son, kills his brother Amnon in revenge, and then tries to kill his father, actually gets his father, does a coup on the palace, gets David kicked out of Israel. David has to go on the run at 67 years old. This is way in the future. And Avshalom takes over his kingdom for 6 months and sleeps with 3 of David's wives. Just to give you an idea of spoiler alert of these 3 children. No. So,
You're lying. How you didn't kill it?
So the reason why I give you a little bit of the spoiler, because I want to show you the greatness of the 2nd son here, right? The 1st son, you see the power of growing up rich, of growing up a prince and the king, right? Even though they're the sons of David, right? Even though they're the sons of David, the 1st one ends up raping his half-sister and ends up being killed by his brother. The 3rd one ends up running a coup on his father, right? He takes over the kingship in his father's lifetime, right? What? And the 2nd son, who, if the 1st one is dead, who has the original claim to being the next king? The 2nd son, not concerned with the kingdom at all. He just sits and learns Torah all day. This is the son of Abigail. He's one of the 4 people to never sin. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. Kileav has another name. In Divrei Yamim, we're told that his name is Daniel. That his real name was Daniel. But people started to call him Kileav after a year or 2. Why? Kileav. What does Kileav mean? He is like his dad. Not kilo, yeah. Like equal to his dad. He looked exactly like his dad. Why? Why did he look like his dad? If you were in Tanakh and T last year, we spoke about the story of David and Abigail, which is this crazy story in which David is on the way to kill Abigail's husband, and Abigail stops him and tells him, don't do this, and they're flirting even though she's a married woman, and Abigail is a prophetess who tells David, my husband's destined to die, you're destined to marry me, right? Don't flirt with me right now, don't kill my husband, he'll die on his own, even though his husband deserved death. It's a whole thing. Wait, and David ends up, yeah.
Was she serious, or she just wanted?
No, she was serious, and she is a prophetess. And Abigail is one of the 4 most beautiful women to ever live. And she's the only woman in Tanakh who's described as smart and beautiful. And she's smart, and she's described as, it just gives us a list of 4. So the reason why I tell you the story is because you have this story of David and Abigail flirting, and then her husband dies. And David waited 3 months to make sure that Abigail was not pregnant before he married her. But still, people would joke. What would they joke? They would claim that the son of Abigail is not David's son. It's actually Naval's son, her ex-husband. And so Hashem made it that David's son looks exactly like his father, which is why even though his name was Daniel, right, he became known as Kileav, because he looked exactly like his dad. There's another reason why Kileav became his name, which is because the word to bring embarrassment has that shorish in it, which is machlim, because Kileav was so smart in Torah that he would bring embarrassment to Ish-Boshet. Who is Ish-Boshet? Ish-Boshet was extremely smart in Torah, that he would embarrass David. And they would have, David and Ish-Boshet would have Torah arguments, and Ish-Boshet would embarrass David in the Torah arguments. Who is Ish-Boshet? Yonatan's son. Yonatan's son was so smart that he would embarrass David in Torah arguments until David's son, Kileav, came and brought embarrassment to Ish-Boshet, because he would be able to embarrass him when he would actually be able to back up David's Torah arguments and give better logic for it. So he has this son who's absolutely brilliant. It was Kileav who Shlomo Hamelech was talking about when he says in Mishlei, I'll say it in English, be wise, my son, and my heart will rejoice, that I may answer the one who taunts me. Right? Because people were taunting David. Now, what were they taunting David about? They were taunting David. What's the number one thing if you were to make fun of David, what's the number one thing you could make fun of him for? If you want to delegitimize him. No, I don't mean Goliath did that. Goliath did that and it didn't work out for him. But I mean like if you want to delegitimize David as a person. No, I mean like as a person. What? Not with Abigail, with Bathsheba. See, Abigail was a prophetess, and Abigail actually said to Bathsheba, you won't sin with me. And she said, with me. Because he will sin in the future with Bathsheba. Later on in the future, we'll get to in Tanakh and T, there's a whole story, which Bathsheba's a married woman. She's bathing on her rooftop, and David sees her, and he ends up sleeping with her, and then gets her husband killed in battle, right? And people talk about this, right? This is a major sin of David. It begs a lot of questions. We'll get to it when we get to it. But if you want to denigrate David Hamelech, the easiest thing that you can do is talk about the story of Bathsheba. And the Gemara tells us that David did not sin in this story. He did not sin, right? We'll get into the details, but he did not sin in this story. And it's Bathsheba who ultimately ends up being the mother of Shlomo. How do we know David didn't sin? There's a proof. If you commit adultery, there's a specific punishment that the Torah talks about. Of course, besides being punished, there's a curse onto those who commit adultery, those who do illicit relations. The curse is that you will not have a son who's wise, and you won't have a son who's a Torah scholar, right? The price of doing sexual misconduct means that your offspring, which comes from, right, sexuality, it's related, it's mida keneged mida. You use your sexuality for bad, then the sexuality which is supposed to be good, which is offspring, won't produce good offspring. And what does that mean? That means Kileav's existence is a proof that he never sinned with Bathsheba. How is it a proof? Because here you have this son who's extremely wise, one of the 4 people to never sin, right? Kileav is one of the 4 people to never sin, extremely wise, the smartest guy in Torah, and he's an offspring of David. So could David have sinned with Bathsheba? It can't be. Even so. So the point is, right, Teshuvah can get you absolved of your sin, but it's not going to get you necessarily the fruits of something like this, right? You don't just deserve to have such an amazing son. So, out of respect for David, the reason why in Divrei Hayamim it calls him Daniel and not Kileav is because in Divrei Hayamim it never talks about the story with Bathsheba, out of respect for David Hamelech. It never mentions it. So there's no reason to call him Kileav, which means bringing embarrassment to others. But over here, in this Sefer, it talks about the story of Bathsheba, and therefore, they call him Kileav over here. That's who it is. If you want to name after him, a lot of people who you think their name is Daniel after the prophet Daniel, my neighbor, his son's name is Daniel, and he didn't name him after the prophet. He named him after David's son, the son of David and Abigail. So just now you know about that. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. Now, when I say Kileav is one of the four tzaddikim to never sin. Anybody know the other 3?
David's dad.
David's dad, Yishai?
We learned this.
Yeah. None of the girls. Amram, the father of Moshe.
There's only one smart girl in the Torah, he just said.
What does it start with?
What?
What's the first letter?
Binyamin.
Oh.
Binyamin. That's what we're talking about. Kileav. Yeah. So the 4 people to never sin, is Kileav, the son of David.
The harp girl. A pro woman.
What?
Does it start with?
So the 4 people to never sin is Kileav ben David, Ishai Avi David, Amram Avi Moshe, and Binyamin ben Yaakov. No. Kileav is a man from Yehuda, 2 of the spies. What? You talking about Cain and Hevel? Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Now, by the way, these 4 people, the only reason why they died is for the sin of Adam Rishon. If you don't sin, you technically don't deserve death. But they died only because of the sin of Adam Rishon. Okay, there's a very powerful lesson here. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I'll repeat it. And if you're in my class, you heard it a couple months ago, but I'll say it again. The 4 people who never sinned, are they the 4 greatest people ever?
No. Can I say why?
Go for it.
Because if you never sin, then like you have no way to like become better. Yeah, so like you're just as the main thing is like if you sin and then you do teshuvah, then you become even greater.
So these 4 people, right? These 4 people are related. Who are they related to? To David, Moshe, and Yaakov. Right? David, Moshe, and Yaakov. If I were to ask you to like name the goats of Judaism, and you wanted to name the top 3, If you wanted to, you could say David, Moshe, and Yaakov, right? Literally Yaakov, we're all Yisrael after him. He's the father of the nation. You have Moshe, our greatest prophet, and you have David, our greatest king, right? You want to say those are the top three, you can very much so make a case. Those are the top three greatest humans to ever live. And they are not the ones who never sinned. It's their relatives, but they are greater than the relatives who never sinned. And the clear lesson is in Judaism, it's not about whether or not you sin, it's about what you do after that, right? Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah.
So what about Moshe?
What about Moshe?
Moshe said he still didn't get it going there.
So that's a whole different discussion that if you want, we can get into it. But why Moshe, even though he didn't really sin, it was very, very slight, why he got such a harsh punishment, even with teshuvah. It's a whole thing. We can talk about it a different time.
Tzaddik falls 7 times.
There's also that. But the truth is, Moshe didn't really deserve the punishment. It was, you know what a makeup whistle is? You ever watch basketball? A makeup whistle? A makeup whistle is when you try to even it out. You're unfair on one play because of something that happened previously in the game. And that's a little bit of what happened there, but besides the point. Okay, anyways, I want to get to the third kid over here. What's the name of the third kid? The third kid's name is Avshalom, the son of Makkah. Is his mother Jewish? His mother is the princess of Geshur. So David took a non-Jewish woman as a wife. Is that what we're saying? So have you ever heard in the Torah of an Eshet Yifat Toar, which literally means a very beautiful woman? There's a whole thing in the Torah that if you're in the middle of war, right, and you come across a beautiful woman and you can't run away, right, you're stuck, right, you're in the middle of a war, there's nowhere for you to go, you can actually take this woman and convert her to Judaism. Now they do this whole thing where after you sleep with her once, you have to shave her hair, make her grow out her nails. We don't want you to bring this woman into Judaism, right? We don't want you to bring this woman into Judaism. But if you want to, you're good. And there's this whole thing of why does the Torah allow that? I thought Judaism was all about self-control. And the answer is the Torah doesn't ask you to do something that's not physically possible. And there's a whole thing that we can get into a different time. It's related to the story about Sheva, actually, as to sexuality and the way it's tied in over here. We won't get distracted by it. But the point is, the very next thing in the Torah speaks about a ben Sora Mora. What's a ben Sora Mora? What's a ben Sora Mora? That is a rebellious son. And the Torah talks about that if you have this son who is a young boy and he steals from his parents and he steals for meat and wine, you should kill him on the spot. Don't let him live out, even though it seems like he didn't do much. And the idea of the Torah is, the reason why these two stories are back to back is because the Torah is telling you, if you marry this non-Jewish woman and convert her to Judaism only for her beauty, what is that going to result in? A ben Sora. It's going to result in a rebellious son. And so David did that. David married this non-Jewish woman, the princess of Geshur, converted her, and ultimately who came out of that? Avshalom. And Avshalom is the one who rebels against his father and tries to take over his father's own kingdom in his lifetime. How did Avshalom do it? Well, think about it. David's very good looking, and David took this woman who's obviously very beautiful, otherwise he wouldn't have done it, right? And so Avshalom was extremely good looking, and he used his charm and charisma and his looks to get all of David's people on his side and actually overthrow David Hamelech. Right? And I want you to think about this. Sometimes we get caught in our own time period and you think of like yesteryear when things are like better, right? And it's like, oh, of course everybody respected David HaMelech in his own time, right? In their own time, Moshe was fought with. David was fought with, right? It really shows you how human beings, we don't change. And people don't actually appreciate greatness in their own generation, even to Moshe and David. Now, by the way, going back to the rape, it was Avshalom's sister who ends up being raped. And the reason why, we're not blaming her, but the reason why Amnon, his half-brother, was so attracted to her is because this is the sister of Avshalom, the daughter of this beautiful woman. So she was just extremely, extremely beautiful. And that's kind of what started that. But anyways, let's continue. Any questions on anything we just did? I know I just threw a lot at you. There's a lot more things we have to tie, and you'll have to wait till we get the story about Sheva. Any questions? Okay, let's talk about his fourth son now. Baharavi Adoniah. His fourth son was Adoniah ben Chagit, the son of Chagit. Now Adoniah is the brother who when David decides that Shlomo is going to be the one who takes over him, Adoniah tries to take the kingship from Shlomo. And Shlomo ends up having to kill his half-brother Adoniah. Right? So if you're getting into like the politics right now, each of these sons has a crazy story. The first one is killed by his brother, rapes his half-sister. The third one, right, tries to take the throne from his father and kills his half-brother in revenge. The fourth son tries to take the throne from Shlomo and ends up dying. I'm just trying to give you the idea of the second son over here of Avigail is so amazing that he never even tries to touch the throne. He lets the brothers fight. He doesn't care, just sits and learns Torah all day, right? Even though he's older than all of them except the first one. By the way, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, anybody know who that is?
Yeah.
Who is Rabbi Yehuda Nasi? You heard of him? We call him Rebbe. He's the one who wrote the Mishnah, right? He's one of the greatest rabbis to ever live. He is a descendant of David Hamelech. Through who? V'achamishi, the fifth son. Shiftaya ben Avital. Shiftaya is the Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi's great grandfather. Yeah, Menashe, you had a question?
Did he end up becoming king?
Adoniah? No, Shlomo ends up killing him. Yeah. Pretty much what happens is David is on his deathbed, and Adoniah, before David dies, tries to take over the kingdom. By the way, David's not even king. I'm already talking about him on his deathbed at the end of the story. He makes a whole announcement to everyone. Yoav ends up going on Adoniah's side, right? And then David puts out a proclamation that Shlomo is going to be the next king, and Adoniah has to respect it. But then once David dies, Shlomo tells Adoniah, don't try anything, I'll have to kill you. And Adoniah tries something, and Shlomo ends up killing him. Yeah.
How come God had to appoint people to help Moses, but for David, he just gave him like all-knowing powers?
So he didn't have it. So you know how in America we have the balance of powers. You have Congress, you have the Supreme Court, and you have the president. It's balance of power. Certain things that the president can do that the Supreme Court can't, etc., etc. This idea actually comes from over here. David was not an all-powerful king. You had the Kohen Gadol and you had the prophet, and each one had certain things that they can do that the other ones cannot do. David actually had to answer to the Kohen Gadol and to the prophet, and the prophet had to answer to the Kohen Gadol and the king, and the Kohen Gadol and
Which king was it that God gave him
Shlomo was king over the whole world. David's son. Yeah, David's son, Shlomo. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know which.
Wait, didn't he run away from someone?
First he played possum, right? He was cool, and then once he tried something, that's when Shlomo had to show his boss.
What did he try to do?
Take over the kingship from Shlomo in defiance of his father, right? And now we have a sixth son, Vahashishi, and the sixth one, his brother.
Fine.
His brother. Adoniah, his brother.
I would not do that. My brother said
What?
Kingship.
Like we're just gonna be like, yes.
I already told you that Avshalom killed his half-brother, Amnon, who raped his full sister, Tamar.
Oh, I
will pull it through his head.
half brother is not the same thing as.
No, these are both half-brothers. They all have different moms.
That's almost half brother.
Yeah, they all have different moms. What?
How many half brothers are there?
We're going to talk about it in a moment. David had 18 wives.
Yeah. Compared to Solomon, who had 1,000.
900 something. But anyways, let's get through this. So Vashishi, and the sixth one, Yitra'am le'Eglah, was born to Eglah. Eshes David, the wife of David. Ela Yildu leDavid b'Chevron. These were the ones born to David in Chevron. So we heard about the sixth son. His name is Yitra'am, and he was born to a woman named Eglah. Now, our sages tell us, the Chazal tell us, that Eglah was actually Michal. Who's Michal? Michal is the daughter of Shaul, his first wife that he was married to, that once David had to go on the run, Shaul kept Michal and gave Michal to another man named Paltiel. And this whole time, David is married to all these women, and he doesn't have his original wife, Michal. We're going to see later on in this Perek, he ends up marrying Michal again. We're going to get there. Not married, but he ends up getting her back. But the point is, it's telling us that really this woman was Michal. Now the truth is, the Tanakh tells us in 3 prakim, quote, Michal, the daughter of Shaul, was childless until the day of her death. That Michal didn't have children. So how could you say that this is Michal? So according to one opinion, it means from this point on, right? Now, there's an opinion that she actually didn't have children. Why? Because Michal made fun of David in public. We're going to get later on in the story, when David is instituting Yerushalayim, David is dancing all crazy, and Michal, the daughter of Shaul, says this is not fit for a king, for you to dance like this. And because she went after David, she ends up dying childless. Even though according to the Chachamim, she does have a child. Now, it could be that she actually died in childbirth, right? Because it says she didn't have a child until the day of her death, meaning she had a child on the day of her death. And the reason why it doesn't call her Michal, but it calls her Eglah, is because she screamed like a calf, right? Eglah means a calf, when she died in childbirth. So that's where the name would come from. Now, what's interesting here is we went through 6 women over here that David is married to, but who's the only woman that it calls Ashes David? The only woman that it calls Ashes David is Michal, or Eglah over here at the end. Why? Because that's his first wife. And that's his wife of his youth, right? There's something about that, right? Of course, now we don't even relate to the concept of more than one wife, but there is, right? This was the wife of his youth, his original wife, and so she's the wife of David, right? Okay. Or it could be that it's emphasizing that she's the wife of David because all this time, who was Michal living with? She was living with this man that Shaul gave her to named Paltiel. And Paltiel put a sword in the middle of the bed and never touched her because he knew that she was technically married, right? Shaul had this whole thing where Doeg came to him and said, oh, David's not really married to her, so you can marry her off to someone else. But Paltiel said, no, they're really married. This is adultery. And he never touched Michal, even though he lived with her, right? And so therefore, it says the wife of David, not to say that she's more special to him than any of the other women, but to say that she really is the wife of David, meaning she didn't commit adultery, right? She didn't sleep with Paltiel, and Paltiel didn't sleep with her. Okay. According to another opinion, she's actually, Eglah, this woman is actually the mother of Michal. And that when David becomes king, who does he marry? Shaul's wife. According to an opinion, it's not Michal, but it's Shaul's wife, because once a woman is married to the king, do you know who she's allowed to marry after that? Only another king. She's not permitted to any other man, right? She has the status of royalty now, and she can only be with the king. She can't downgrade. So, okay. Now, according to another opinion, it's not Michal's mother, but it's actually a concubine of Shaul. Shaul had a concubine named Ritzpah Bat Ayah, and David actually took her as a wife, which we'll talk about her in a moment. She's going to come up in the story, yeah.
Out of all David's wives, like, who became the queen?
So he has 18 wives. He has 18 wives, but he has 3 main wives. His 3 main wives are Michal, Avigail, and Bathsheba. Now, Bathsheba, and that she's the mother of Shlomo. So the line of kings goes through her. Michal, and that's his first wife, right? And Michal, has, right, just called her potentially Eshes David. But Avigail is his like main zivug, like their souls are together, and Avigail ends up saving his life. And so he has 3 main wives, but they're all queens. Yeah.
Why does he have multiple wives?
Why in general, or him specifically?
In general.
So in general, the easiest way to explain it, of course, marriage is different than it is today, but the easiest way to explain it from a biological perspective is if you talk, what's the main purpose of marriage? Like the most pure purpose of it?
Have kids.
Have kids, right? Now, outside of that, there's a lot more to it, right? It's not just marriage is about kids. There's a lot more to marriage. But if the main purpose is having kids, then biologically speaking, a man can have multiple wives and a woman cannot have multiple husbands, right? Because if a man has 4 wives, they can all be pregnant at the same time. Like Yaakov had 4 wives and they were all pregnant at the same time. The Shvatim are a lot closer in age than you think. But once a woman is pregnant, she can't literally have a second husband. So from just a biological perspective, there's no such thing as a woman having multiple husbands. If you look at it as just a partner in creating a child. A man could have limitless partners at the same time in creating a child. Of course, there's a lot more to marriage than just having a child. So it gets deeper. But yeah, I don't want to get distracted by it. What? It was, not anymore. Men don't have the ability to actually give enough love to even one wife at this point, let alone giving enough love and attention and care to multiple wives.
One of the main reasons why men these days don't give their attention to one wife is because they're probably thinking of other ones.
There's other reasons. Okay. Now, I will tell you, the Chazal tell us, Zara, how long are we in? Okay, we're going to do 2 more psukim and then we'll stop. We'll stop in like 3 minutes. So, Chazal tell us that there are those who had many sons and it was to their advantage, and there are those who had many sons and it was to their disadvantage. Who had many sons and it was to their advantage? Yaakov and David. And I know you might say, wow, look what happened with some of David's sons. It was to his advantage. Now, for the bad, it was Achav and Eli HaKohen, but we won't get into it. But anyways, the Torah tells us that, you know how many children David had? 400. David had 400. And it says that each one, I'll explain how, each one was a Yifat Toar. What's a Yifat Toar? Good looking and a royal demeanor, meaning, remember I just told you, I'll get to it in a moment. Remember I just told you how David took a woman of war as a wife and ended up having Avshalom and Tamar from this beautiful woman. So according to the Gemara, it's not the only woman that he took in war. He took many women in war and ended up having children with them. And his army, the main component of David's army, was these 400 children. David had an army of just 400 children who were extremely good looking and in shape and powerful, and they were very good soldiers. Anyways, that's the end about David's children. We're going to do just 2 more psukim and then we'll stop. But let's get back. We were talking about a war, right? We're talking about the war between the house of David and the house of Shaul. Pasuk Vav in Gimel. Vayihi biyot ha-milchama. And getting back to this war. Ben Beit Shaul ben Beit David. Avner haya mitchazek beveit Shaul. Avner supported the house of Shaul. So before we get into the next events, what is the Navi trying to emphasize to us? The Navi is emphasizing to us that who's really holding up Ish-Boshet ben Shaul? Who's really holding up the power of the house of Shaul? It's Avner, right? After Shaul dies, it's Avner who says Ish-Boshet's going to remain king. If Avner would have put his weight as the general behind anyone else, right, they would have been king. We know this because Ish-Boshet is not a man of war. How do we know he's not a man of war? Because he didn't die with the rest of Shaul's children, right? Shaul died in war with Yonatan and with all these other children. Why? They were all soldiers. Ish-Boshet was at home doing nothing. And that's why he didn't die. That's why he's the only remaining son of Shaul. So what's the only reason why Ish-Boshet is in power? Because the general Avner is propping him up. And so I need you to understand that context of this, because that's really important. You need to understand the dynamic of who's really the most powerful person in Binyamin in Yisrael. It's not Ish-Boshet the king, it's Avner pulling the strings behind him. And if Avner wants someone else to be king, that'll happen, right? And now this is important because what happens? Ish-Boshet is about to criticize Avner. Let's see. Shaul Peleges, Shaul had a concubine, Ushma, and her name was Ritzpah bat Ayah. Ritzpah, the daughter of Ayah. Now remember I told you that according to some, David took her as a wife. Who's the concubine of Shaul? Who is she allowed to marry? Just kings. And what happens? Shaul had a concubine, this woman Ritzpah. Vayomer el Avner, Ish-Boshet says to Avner, it doesn't even say his name, but it's presumed that it's Ish-Boshet, or maybe he told her, Ish-Boshet said this in private. Madua bata al Peleges shavi. Why have you slept with my father's concubine? So, turns out Avner, it seems, at least according to Ish-Boshet, sleeps with Shaul's concubine. And it's a wife who doesn't have like the status of a wife. It's a built-in side chick for a king. Yeah. The reason, but it's not a mistress because in the world of having multiple wives, there's no such thing as a man cheating on his wives, right? He's allowed to have a second or third wife. It's just she doesn't actually get any. Like a wife gets money, gets certain things, right? She has certain rights. The concubine is not fully married to the king, right? A king is allowed to have concubines. Yeah.
The king like has sexual relations with someone he's not married to.
She becomes a concubine.
But
He's
against Torah, because you have to be married to someone too.
so you can get married through intimacy. So that's one of the ways you get married, actually. There are three ways for a man and a woman to get married. One is he gives her a document that says we're married. Two is he gives her money or some of the value of money and says we're married. Three is he sleeps with her and says we're married. Nowadays in our wedding, we do all three, even though you only need one, right? Underneath the chuppah, you have the document, you do the ring, and then we dance the couple to the yichud room, which is the third one.
Back then, they would just like sleep with someone and then they were
So the truth is the only way to do it is you need to have the kavanah that you're getting married, which means nowadays we don't trust any person to be able to get married in this third way. You could use it as an excuse, which is why, you know what yibum is? Yibum is when a man dies and he has no children, his brother gets married man, his brother gets married, right? To have theoretically reincarnate his soul and to continue his brother's line. The thing is with Yibum, there's only one way you can marry a woman with Yibum. Only with sexual relations. You cannot marry with a document or with money, which is why nowadays, it doesn't happen so often. And obviously if it happens, it's tragic. You're talking about typically a young man dying without children or an old man dying without children and they never had children. When it does happen, we don't do Yibum nowadays. We make the brother divorce the wife, his sister-in-law. Why? We don't trust that anybody can actually have the kavanah to get married, in that capacity. But anyways, so the point is that if the king were to sleep with a woman, he could have a mind to marry, and that's what a concubine is. But he's not giving her full rights. So anyways, considering how reliant Ish-Boshet is on Avner, right? Considering how reliant Ish-Boshet is on Avner, it's to his credit that he actually goes after Avner, right? And if you can imagine, if you're Avner and you're holding up Ish-Boshet, it's only because of you that he's in power. What do you think Avner's reaction is going to be? Anybody know? No? We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining Tanakh and Tea. What?
It's coming.
Yes.